Ooh, that looks tasty. Welcome, folks! Today, the Hungry Gamer is back with another Kickstarter preview. And before I jump into this is a little bit different than the usual reviews and previews that I do. And that's because what you see before you is called Worlds XP, and it is not a board game in the traditional sense. What it is a gamification system in order to take a classroom and install elements of role-playing games to the class in order to support the learning environment and student growth. And because of that, as you've probably already noticed, this is actually a paid video. As many of you know, I am also a full-time teacher, and I was asked to look at this in my capacity as a teacher and what it would take to implement it into my classroom, as well as the hungry gamer viewing it from a game standpoint. So that's the reason for the paid promotion in this particular video. First off, I do have to say that this is all prototype. And you will also see there are many things here on my computer as well that I'll be talking about as we go through. And so before I dive in, it's important for me to tell you what is coming with this system. With this system, you will be receiving a book that explains the basics of how the game system works. Within that is a detailed plan of how to actually implement it into your classroom, how to introduce the students to the gaming system and the basic ideas behind role-playing games, experience, leveling up, making choices, and just the idea of role-play in general. You'll also receive character cards, and you'll see these are just a couple of the examples here. You'll see they're all very varied, and I'll talk a little bit more about creating characters in a little bit. A whole bunch of different item cards here. I just pulled a few of them out, spaces to where you can name them, whatever it is that fits what you're doing. A bunch of experience. All of these are 10 experience tokens here, and then various levels that you can award the students. Finally, it will also come with several PowerPoint presentations, which are the adventures themselves. The initial Kickstarter is going to come with 3 adventures that chain together, as well as 3 side quests, and one of those is a final boss encounter. With all of that, let's talk a little more in depth about what you're actually getting in this Kickstarter, so then I can talk about what I like about it and what maybe my concerns about it also are. First, I've already mentioned there is a fairly long document which tells you how to implement this into your classroom. I will tell you that the idea behind it is that every so often you get to do an adventure as a class. Each one of your students is their own character that they've worked on, and as a class you use one of these PowerPoints and you go through the adventure, and I want to show you one of those in just a little bit, so don't worry about that. And in between each game session, however, the game doesn't stop because various deeds within the class are used in order to earn XP. And I'll give you an example right here. As you can see here, we have earning XP. Get 100% on a quiz or a test, will earn you 20 XP. Answer a question correctly during group discussion gets you XP. Help a classmate gets you XP. And I'll say these are just examples that they have given. Very clearly, this is something that you work out with your own classroom as to what is the best thing to do, best thing to include. And the idea being is that this game that is ongoing, one, helps with classroom management, as in general the students want to earn more XP and want to gain the rewards. They are a little more focused, and then you're able to tie these XP rewards into the lessons that you are working on. And there's all kinds of things that you can do in order to reward students. And as you go through, the idea is that every 100 XP will earn an individual character a new level. However, what it also does is unlocking a level will give you access to various items in class outside of the game. And I'll give you another example right here, as you can see. So in this one, they recommend a scroll of knowledge. So then you get to choose the article that is read in class. This particular class uses Media Mondays. Or you get a Powers Unite, choose your own group during station activities, a sweet gem, a piece of candy, or whatever it might be. I would personally use things that would allow a student to choose their own group they're going to work in. Various things like that are the things that I would actually offer my students. It has listed the time machine there, and it just has a very specific assignment that it listed, but I might use that to say, oh, well, you can use your time machine and I will pretend that this assignment that you turned in late is on time. And just various things like that. These are things that teachers use all the time, but it's now has a very specific way to achieve these goals, which is interesting to me. Let's talk a little bit more about how the actual game itself works. And I do want to share with you these first few lessons that you would implement into your class so you can kind of understand what happens. So there are a couple ways of selecting a character. You could just go with these character cards that are provided, and I'll say this is only a partial number of character cards. There's all sorts of character cards that'll be provided in the final version. I just have a few as this demo. But what you're doing is, after each student gets their character card, it's a way to be used to prompt a writing assignment. And what you give them is you'll give them one of these here, where they're going to name their character, a sentence or two what their character's like, what's their character's job, what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, what's their favorite accessory, what do they wear, where are they from, who have they had relationships before, what are their beliefs, and over here, this is where you could either attach the character card you've given them, or they can create their own. I know that sounds very basic and RPG 101, but remember, most of your students probably are not gamers. And this is doing two things. One, it is a way to kind of unlock their imaginations and get them thinking about these different characters. And that's why you have these prompts here, because if you are given this character, this is who you are, well, you're going to have to figure that out. What on earth is that creature? Clearly, it's some kind of alien. It has a weakness for meat, clearly, and it has a gigantic six-sided die that it carries with it all the time. But then they get to create the backstory behind it. And that in itself becomes its own assignment. Depending on what grade level you are, that can be its own assignment. So it becomes a creative writing assignment. You can take that and make it a descriptive essay or a descriptive paragraph. It could be done as a letter. It could be done as a journal. There's so many different things, and it's used to engage the students in something that is fun and still advances the game. And the second thing that you do after that, and you should do it on another day, is then you dive into your character relationships and your character backstory. Again, I'll show you the document here. We've done a little bit of this on the other sheet, but here, now you're starting to talk about how you've met the other characters. And the most important one down here is, what is your character's desire? What does your character actually want? Maybe it's to return home. Maybe it's to save their planet, or whatever it is. It's okay. Each student can have their own goal, because as you move into the actual game itself, the core of this system revolves around this interdimensional ship. And so this allows for each student to have a character that is completely their own. They can be a pirate if they want, they can be an orc, they can be a space alien, they can be a human from far in the future. It's okay, because this interdimensional ship has gathered everyone together, and then, like every interdimensional ship is wont to do, of course, it's going to break down. And that is what these first 3 PowerPoint adventures are. And again, it's worth repeating that this here is in its prototype form. Art will be changed and so on. But what I wanted to show you here is, in this adventure, you have your slides, But down at the bottom, it's giving you, as the teacher, the information that you might need in order to prompt the students to start to role play and have their adventure. It's mostly fairly simple things, but what it's doing is it's prompting you in ways to get your students to engage. Now, I know one of the questions that people have, and this is the first question that I had when I started looking at it, well, what if I got a really big class? This year, I'm lucky and my classes are fairly small, actually very small, 16, 17 kids, but in the past, I've had classes upwards of 36 students, and so how do you manage that? How on earth are you supposed to have an adventure when you make a decision and then you have all these students shouting at once? And in the book, it gives you suggestions and ways to manage that. It actually recommends another lesson where you have the students and they get put into guilds of a sort. And then the guild has a different leader and you kind of rotate through and they're able to make those decisions. And as you come to these decisions in the adventure, the different guild leaders get to speak up and they can nominate members of their group to say, oh, there's a gigantic boulder in front of you. What are you going to do? Well, maybe the guild leader looks around and they see that one of the characters in their guild is this guy. Well, he looks pretty buff. So we're going to have Fritz here go and move the boulder. And then you, as the kit master, the person running the game, you can look at it and say, oh yeah, that makes sense to me. You're able to move the boulder, or maybe not. Because now you're able to introduce other elements of games. And what you can do is maybe you have dice and you do a dice roll off. Maybe you don't want to deal with dice. Maybe you just have you flip some playing cards. Maybe you just do paper, rock, scissors against the student. Whatever it is, it doesn't really matter because you are engaging them in something that is gamified for them as they're trying to go through and tell this story. And again, I will say that almost all of these different slides, they have on there various things that can happen if you say yes, if you say no, if they succeed, if they fail, as they kind of work through these adventures. And then the last thing that I do need to point out is you see we have all these item cards here. And what's cool about these item cards is you're going to be able to customize them to your individual game. So whatever the adventure you have is, you can put right down in there what this actually is. And again, this is just a prototype. And then you're able to pass those out to the students and they're able to hold on to those, turn them in, so on and so forth. And then I will also say that these chaining adventures, even those have an overarching decision that you get to make. And I'm not going to spoil it, but there are various factions in this overarching storyline, and you, at the end of the day, are going to have to choose who it is that you're helping. Now, there's a little bit more that I want to throw out there and explain before I talk to you about my final thoughts on this. And that is, we all know that in any good game, any good adventure game, there is a boss that you have to take out at the end, and this is no different. The Kickstarter will come with a, for want of a better term, boss fight or boss level. Again, it's set up in a PowerPoint, but it's going to have various ways that you can run this combat. And the way that's recommended is it is a deck building game. And as the students are able to answer questions, they are awarded cards. It might be a POW card, something like this, or it might be a book card. Clearly the POWs are representing your fighting ability, while books are representing your cunning as you're trying to either beat up or outwit this monster that you're fighting. And the way it's set up is it is actually set up as a class-wide deck building game. And so then as you play through, you're answering your questions that you may have to gain the cards to build your deck. You get things wrong, you might get something like a wound that kind of clogs up your deck, and then you're able to play using that deck against the boss to try to take him out. And again, that's just one of the variants that they offer. And so all of that comes together into this gamification system for a classroom. And so let me talk about my thoughts on this. And I'm giving you these thoughts less so as a game reviewer and more as a teacher. And so to go through, I'm going to start with some of the things that I think are very well done. One of the things I think is really well done is the kit book, the implementation guide is well done. It has enough in there to where, as a teacher, even if you are not familiar with role-playing games as a genre, it gives you enough so you're able to do it. It has in there enough lessons so you are able to introduce to the students what this system is, what it is like, and it is clear, it is well done. I like that the PowerPoints are enough of a skeleton of a story that even if you're not very experienced in the genre, you can help the students tell the story. It has in the kit enough information to help you manage whatever size class you have, whatever age class you have, and it allows you to really tell the story with little or no experience. And it also sets you up well enough to where you can create your own adventures fairly easily once you've kind of played through these three and you kind of get the idea of what's going on. I like all of that. As a teacher, I could implement this into my classroom. The next thing I'll say is I like that this is something that should be done over time. I would probably do this over the course of 5 or 6 weeks, and it would be one class a week on a Friday or on a Wednesday or whatever day happens to work out. We would be able to do one of these adventures, and in between, the students are going to be earning their XP. Maybe during class they will find an item. Maybe they just wind up finding a scroll. Maybe I don't even name the scroll, and as we go through and they're stuck on something, says, oh, I have this scroll, and then they can tell me what it is, and maybe it can be used, I can take it back. And I like all of that. I like that it's open-ended enough that the students are able to have some freedom, but it's structured enough that the teacher can keep control of what's going on. And I really also like the fact that what it's doing is it is including a broader classroom management system of this positive reinforcement. So often when we are disciplining students, and I'm as guilty of as anybody else, it becomes a punitive system. We're going to take this away if you don't. I'm going to email your parents if you don't. I'm going to send you to the principal if you don't, or whatever it is. However, this is more positive. This is one of the things that many of my classes struggle with, is coming in, sitting down, getting ready to work quietly. Well, if everyone does that, maybe they get 10 experience that they can parcel out how they choose, or tying it to academic improvement. I really like. I love the idea that if I have a student that maybe has been having a hard time with their vocabulary or with their essays, well, if they show improvement from one assignment to the next and they're learning, well, yeah, here's some experience. And then they're able to get, in addition to just the pleasure of the grade, suddenly it's this game. And by getting the reward of the game in the middle of the week, that's going to get them more excited to use the things that they're earning, use what they're learning. And it all starts to kind of snowball together until you have this fun game class system going on. You can almost look at it as the middle of the week when you're giving them experience and stuff for doing well in class or helping each other, cleaning up, whatever it is, these good behaviors that we want to reinforce. It's almost as if that is, if you're a video game player, when you're grinding to level up, you're kind of walking around the map waiting to run into a random encounter to fight. And I think that is really cool. The next thing that I really like about this is not only does it encourage growth as far as behavior goes, growth academically, it encourages organization. Because at the end of the day, these cards are fairly small, but they have to keep track of these things. And so they're going to have to organize themselves. And even if they're only organizing just this game, it's the only thing they organize, they're getting experience doing that. Anybody who teaches knows that probably half your students, their binders and their backpacks are disasters and they lose things all the time. Well, if I go to my students and I say, just so you know, if you lose your experience, you've lost your experience. If you've earned level 3, but you've lost that card, you're not level 3 anymore, they're not going to lose it. I can promise you that, because they want to win the game. And so I think it encourages another really good behavior there. So all in all, as you can probably hear, I think this is a really useful tool that you can implement into the classroom. And I think it's really useful in ways beyond just the fun that the students will have in playing the game, because I do think the students will have fun playing the game. The promoting of good behavior, the promoting of working hard, the promotion of showing improvement in their work, which is something that I would focus on. I would focus less on, oh, everyone got 100%, but no. You improved. You did better. Here, have some experience. Have a cool item, whatever it may be. And the addition of items that are useful in the game and then useful in class, like I talked about at the beginning. You've gotten to level 4, or you've just unlocked a time machine, or you've just unlocked the conch shell, which means you get to speak now and decide who it is going to be in your group. And kids in my school would go crazy to be able to pick their own group. And so I love all of these different ideas. I think it's cool. I think it's fun. Now, let me talk about the potential pitfalls that I see, because I will say the biggest challenge to this system is taking the step to implement it, because every teacher is slammed. And every teacher has a lot of curriculum they have to cover. And fitting something like this in can seem daunting, because at the end of the day, even if you don't do the side quests, you're going to sacrifice at least 3 classes to do these 20 to 30 minute adventures. And then at least 2 or 3 nights of homework or in-class assignments so they can do the creative portion to create their characters. And that can seem daunting. And so I do think it's worth putting it out there so that it is a real thing. You are going to have to sacrifice some of your time. Now, for me, I think it's probably worth it, because I think if by doing this and sacrificing that time, students are working harder and they're more focused and so on and so forth, you're going to make that time up back down the road. But I can only speak for myself as far as that goes. So there you have it, folks. That is Worlds XP, the classroom gamification system. And really, Worlds XP is a simple system that allows a teacher to gamify their classroom. It's going to provide you with the tools to create ongoing, potentially a year-long campaign, if you're expanding on your own after that rewards students' imaginations, encourages organization, and provides a natural incentive to focus on their studies in between game sessions. I think if the idea of allowing your class to become their own adventuring party, where they're able to gain experience through academic and behavioral goals throughout the semester, while working towards short 20 to 40 minute scenarios, which is managed by you, the teacher, then I think this is worth checking out. So there you have it, folks. That is Worlds XP. I think it's a really interesting product. As a teacher, I do think there is some real value to it if you are able to implement it into your class. Clearly, some places you won't be able to implement it, but I do think it is potentially a real boon for many a class. If for nothing else, as a way to engage students' imaginations and let them create things using what it is they're learning in class on their own. I teach English, very easy. Creative writing can get into this, but even more so, I mean, you could use this in history. You could have each student, maybe they have to be a character from history, and that's the character they're creating. And you could do that, and suddenly these characters are suddenly trapped on this interdimensional ship. This is going to be hitting Kickstarter in November. I think if you're a teacher, it's definitely worth checking out. As always, if you found this video at all useful or interesting, please like, share, subscribe. You know how it works. As always, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.